My wife used our wedding savings to spend a week with her best friend on vacation. I always knew her best friend was a problem, but I never thought he'd be the reason my wedding got canceled. When my fiancée told me she was going away for a week before the wedding, she wouldn't say where. Just that it was something she needed to do. I didn't push. I trusted her. Then I found out she had gone on vacation with him. Not a group trip, not a family visit, just the two of them, drinking cocktails on a beach while I was at home picking out wedding invitations. And when I confronted her, she didn't apologize. She told me I was being controlling. That was the moment I knew. Our wedding wasn't happening. I met Lisa 4 years ago. She was smart, funny, and exactly the kind of person I wanted to spend my life with. From the beginning, we clicked. We talked about everything. Our future, our careers, our dream wedding. She always said she wanted something small and intimate, but meaningful. I believed her. Then there was Jake. Jake had been Lisa's best friend since high school. The kind of guy who was always just a little too close, a little too comfortable. He was loud, dramatic, and constantly needed Lisa's attention. He was also broke. Always borrowing money. Always showing up with some new disaster in his life. I never liked him, but I tolerated him because Lisa swore up and down that he was like a brother to her, that I should have trusted my instincts. When I proposed to Lisa, Jake was thrilled. Over the top happy, even. But something about it felt off. He hugged her for too long, kept making jokes about how nothing would change between them, and even made a toast at our engagement party about how he was losing his other half. People laughed. I didn't, but I let it go, because I trusted Lisa that I thought planning a wedding together would bring us closer. Instead, it showed me just how much influence Jake had over her life, and soon, I'd find out exactly how far that influence went. A few months before the wedding, Lisa announced she was going away for a week. She didn't ask if it was okay. She just told me, like it was a done deal. There was no discussion, no consideration of how it might affect our wedding plans. She simply said she needed this trip before settling down. Like marriage was something to brace herself for. It wasn't just the trip that felt off. Lisa had been distant in ways I couldn't quite explain. She had always been excited about the wedding, making Pinterest boards, talking about color schemes, obsessing over flower arrangements. But lately, that excitement had faded. When I brought up finalizing the venue, she brushed it off. When I reminded her about picking up the rings, she barely acknowledged it. First, I thought it was stress. Weddings could be overwhelming, and maybe she was just feeling the pressure. But then I noticed something else. She wasn't acting like someone overwhelmed by planning. She was acting like someone who had already checked out. When I asked where she was going, she avoided the question. First, she said it was a surprise. Then she called it something personal, something she deserved before becoming a wife. The way she spoke made it clear she didn't want me involved, that it didn't sit right with me that we had spent years building a life together, saving for our future, planning this wedding down to the last detail. And now, suddenly, she was pulling away, acting like she had one foot out the door. That I wanted to believe it was nothing. I wanted to trust her, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. And soon, I'd have proof. Lisa left without showing any excitement or hesitation. She told me she would be back in a week, nothing more. She acted like it was a normal trip, like it didn't matter. I tried to believe her. I told myself not to overthink it. 3 days later, I found out the truth, that I wasn't looking for anything suspicious. I was managing our finances, checking the balance of our wedding fund. That was when I saw the withdrawals, large amounts taken out just before she left. The money was gone. I kept looking, trying to make sense of it. There were payments for a flight, a hotel, expensive restaurants. Then I saw it. A second plane ticket. She was not alone. That I already knew who was with her. It had to be Jake. He was always around, always too close. He treated our relationship like something temporary, something that did not concern him. He joked about Lisa belonging to him, about me being in the way. Now, he had convinced her that I was. Lisa used the money we saved for our wedding to take a vacation with him. She did not tell me. She did not try to hide it, either. She simply decided that her plans were more important. She made her choice. I called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. She was avoiding me. She was not even trying to explain. I sat in silence, looking at the proof in front of me. Lisa had taken everything we planned together and spent it on something else. She did not care how I would feel. She did not care about the life we were supposed to build. I stayed where I was, in the home we were supposed to share, surrounded by reminders of a future that no longer existed. There was nothing left to do but wait. Sooner or later, she would come back, and when she did, I would be ready. Lisa returned exactly a week after she left. She walked through the door like nothing had happened, dropping her bags in the hallway, stretching as if she was just coming back from a normal trip. She looked at me, gave a small smile, and asked if I had missed her. I didn't answer. She moved around the apartment, humming to herself, checking her phone between glances at me. I sat still, watching her, waiting for the moment she would acknowledge what she had done. But she didn't. She acted like everything was the same. Like she hadn't stolen from me. Like she hadn't left me behind. Like she hadn't spent a week with Jake while I sat here, trying to understand how the person I planned to marry could throw it all away. The silence stretched between us. Finally, I spoke. I told her I knew. About the money. About the trip. About Jake. I watched her face closely, waiting for guilt, for regret, anything to prove that she understood what she had done. But she didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. She sighed, rolling her eyes like I was making a big deal out of nothing. She told me I was being controlling, that I was overreacting, that she deserved this trip. She said that marriage was a big commitment, and she needed time to enjoy herself before settling down. And, of course, Jake had encouraged her. He told her she should take time for herself. He told her that she shouldn't let me hold her back. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Just clarity. I asked her if she ever planned to tell me. She shrugged. She said it wasn't important, that I didn't need to know everything she did. I asked if she even wanted to get married. She hesitated. That was all I needed. I told her it was over. No yelling, no dramatic speeches, just a simple truth. I was done. I watched as her face changed, the confidence slipping, her posture stiffening. She laughed at first, like I was joking, like she still had control of the situation. But when she realized I wasn't arguing, wasn't begging, wasn't even angry, just done, her expression darkened. She told me I was making a mistake. She told me I was throwing everything away over one little misunderstanding. She told me I was overreacting, that she had done nothing wrong, that I was the problem. I didn't argue. I didn't try to make her understand. I had already wasted enough time believing in someone who had no respect for me. Lisa stood there, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to fight for her, waiting for me to be the one to break first. But I didn't. I let the silence hang between us until she finally picked up her bags, turned, and left. This time, I didn't care if she came back. I already knew she was gone the morning after Lisa left. I told my parents the wedding was off. I kept it short. I told them she had taken money from our wedding fund and gone on vacation with Jake. I expected them to be shocked, maybe even angry on my behalf. Instead, my mother sighed like she had been expecting this conversation and asked if I had really thought this through. She didn't sound outraged. She sounded disappointed. She told me that Lisa had called them last night. She had already given her side of the story. According to her, she hadn't done anything wrong. She had simply needed space before the wedding, and I had overreacted. She said I was controlling, that I didn't respect her independence, that I had always been jealous of Jake and was looking for a reason to end things. My mother said she understood why I was upset, but relationships required compromise. She asked if I really wanted to throw away years of love over one mistake. I was stunned. My father chimed in, saying Lisa had sounded genuinely sorry, that she hadn't meant to hurt me. He told me to think about it before making any final decisions. My sister, who had always been close with Lisa, sent me a message saying I was being dramatic, that Lisa had been crying for hours, that she had just needed one last trip before committing to marriage. She told me I was making a mistake. It hit me then. No one was on my side. They weren't furious on my behalf. They weren't telling me I deserved better. They were telling me I was at fault. The calls kept coming. Lisa's mother reached out next, saying she knew her daughter could be impulsive but that it didn't mean she didn't love me. She said Jake had always been Lisa's best friend, that I should have trusted her, that I was ruining something beautiful over my own insecurity. My aunt, who had already booked a flight for the wedding, called to say she hoped I would come to my senses before it was too late. Even my grandmother, the one person I thought would take my side, told me I needed to calm down and think about forgiveness. Lisa had gotten to them first. She had controlled the story. And now, they saw me as the bad guy. I was sitting there, listening to my mother tell me to be reasonable, when my doorbell rang. I opened it, expecting maybe a neighbor or a package delivery. Instead, Lisa stood there, and my parents were with her. Let me know if this works before I continue. Lisa stood in front of me with red, puffy eyes, looking small and fragile, like she had been crying for hours. My mother and father were behind her, serious but calm, as if they had come to settle a misunderstanding. I didn't say anything. I stepped aside, letting them in, because I knew they wouldn't leave until they had said what they came to say. Lisa sat on the couch like she still belonged here, hands clenched in her lap, waiting for me to speak first. My mother took the seat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. My father stayed standing, arms crossed, looking at me like I was the one who had something to explain. My mother started first. She said they had talked to Lisa, that they had listened to what she had to say, and they understood why she had done what she did. She told me that everyone made mistakes, that planning a wedding was stressful, and that sometimes people acted without thinking. She said Lisa regretted everything, that she had panicked before the commitment, but that didn't mean she didn't love me. Lisa sniffled and wiped her eyes, nodding, as if this was something we could fix if only I would listen. Then my father spoke. He told me relationships weren't perfect, that forgiveness was part of love, that one mistake shouldn't erase everything Lisa and I had built together. He reminded me of all the good years we had, how happy we had been, how I had once told him Lisa was the best thing that ever happened to me. He said if I walked away now, I would regret it. Lisa finally looked up at me. Her voice was soft, careful, like she knew she had to choose her words wisely. She said she had needed space before the wedding, that she wasn't thinking clearly, that she never meant to hurt me. She said Jake had only encouraged her to take time for herself, that nothing had happened between them, that I had let my jealousy ruin everything. She told me she still wanted to marry me. I waited. I let them say everything they needed to say. Then I asked one question. Would she have told me if I hadn't found out? She hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was enough. I looked at my parents. They were waiting for me to back down, to let this be forgiven, to move forward like none of this had happened. But I saw it clearly now. Lisa wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had been caught. And my family? They didn't care about what I had been through. They just wanted things to go back to normal, no matter what it cost me. I told Lisa she could leave. My mother gasped. My father's expression darkened, and Lisa's face crumbled. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into pretending this was okay. Lisa tried again, said we could work through it, that she would prove to me she still loved me. My mother pleaded with me not to throw this away. I told them I wasn't the one who threw it away. Lisa had done that the moment she took money meant for our future and spent it on a week with another man. I opened the door and waited. Lisa stood, shaking her head like she couldn't believe this was happening. My mother followed her, still begging me to reconsider. My father didn't say another word. He just shook his head in disappointment before walking out after them. When the door closed, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I had lost my fiancé, and maybe I had lost my family too. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel trapped. I felt free. Let me know if this works before I continue. The silence after they left was heavier than I expected. I had prepared myself for Lisa's reaction, for her tears, for the way she would try to twist things back in her favor. But I hadn't prepared for my parents looking at me like I had let them down. Like I was the one who had failed. I sat for a while, waiting to feel regret, waiting for doubt to creep in. It didn't. Instead, my phone started buzzing. First, it was my sister, then my aunt, then a string of messages from family members who had already heard Lisa's version of events. My mother must have started calling people the second she walked out the door. The messages were all the same. Lisa made a mistake, but I was being cruel. She had apologized. She wanted to fix things, but I was too stubborn. A few told me I would regret this. One even said I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't answer any of them. By the end of the night, my mother left me a long voicemail. Her voice was thick with emotion, the kind she used when she was disappointed but still hoping to change my mind. She said Lisa had spent hours crying, that she was heartbroken, that she didn't understand why I was being so harsh. She said I needed to think about whether pride was worth losing someone who loved me. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. The next day, my father sent a message. It was short, direct. You need to fix this. Lisa is willing to forgive you. You should be willing to do the same. I stared at it for a long time. It was strange how simple they made it sound, as if what she had done was just a bad argument, something we could smooth over with the right words. They didn't see it for what it was: betrayal. Not just the trip, not just the money, but the way she had lied, the way she had played the victim, the way she had turned my own family against me. I typed a response. There's nothing to fix. If you can't understand that, I don't know what else to say. I hit send and left it at that. The following days were quiet, but the damage had already been done. My parents didn't call. My sister stopped messaging. The family chat, which had once been filled with wedding plans and congratulations, went silent whenever I joined. It was clear where they stood. I had lost more than just Lisa, but the more time passed, the more I realized I didn't need to win them back. I didn't need to explain myself to people who had already decided I was wrong. I wasn't going to spend my life proving why I deserved better than someone who had no respect for me. They had made their choice. Now, I was making mine. Let me know if this works before I continue.